Okay, so today we're going to be talking about with Airtable builds, with working with Optimize, what can you expect in the first 2 weeks of an implementation with us? Often this is a question we get like, let's set some expectations. It's no, what's going to be happening in the first few weeks. So I have Kelly here today. We're going to be talking about exactly that. We've had some pretty amazing projects start up and it's a super relevant topic as of recently. Kelly, if you want to give like a quick intro and then we can jump into it.
Yep. Thanks, Ben. Kelly Williams, Director of Client Experience. Been with Optimize a few months and really enjoying helping customers build and improve the process of their workflows with Airtable. I've been using Airtable since 2020. I worked at a publicly traded communications company and ran the security PMO team there. So I built out project program portfolio management and a whole bunch of associated workflows for budgeting, annual planning, and more.
Sweet. So we're going to jump right into it. The Could you give a little bit of context as to like I think some important things for the people watching this to know, because like this 15 weeks is a fairly large implementation for us. What would be the size of team that would need this, and then for those watching, you can scale it down from what we're talking about, or
Yeah,
what would be
this is for a large team. This would be like what I managed at the communications company. Company I worked with went through a lot of growth and restructuring, but at its peak, there was myself and then four project managers, and then we had over 100 to like 127 people, I think, on the data security team itself delivering work. So there's a lot of additional filters and things that were needed, as well as what it took to link a lot of records together to be able to manage a team that large. In addition, we had a lot of other use cases that we were managing too. I think a more typical implementation for project management, depending on like what type of projects being managed, is probably like 6 to 8 weeks. Some of that depending on how much information is already set at the beginning versus discovery. But I think that's a little bit more typical of thinking of project tasks, maybe some project templates, maybe how they relate to some programs, as well as us building out everything for the different levels of personas. An individual contributor who needs to work on tasks, all the way up to a leader that wants an extremely high level dashboard.
Yeah, so we'll jump right into it. I think this is actually a proposal we built for a relatively large implementation for about 100 to 150 users, and it's for a project management system built from scratch. So same thing Kelly's talking about, except everything we're building in this would be from scratch. And so talking through like what would you expect in these first few weeks of implementation?
Yeah, I think this is a really great example. And if we think again about, this being 15 weeks and it's very large, and if we were bringing it down to something that's a little more typical, in that 8 week plus or minus range, what you see of these first 3 weeks would be condensed. But this is like the bread and butter of getting to the end results that we want. And it feels a little weird to customers sometimes because they think they're gonna hand us some requirements and we're gonna start building, and we can, but it doesn't usually achieve the best end result. So in these weeks where you see like the gathering of requirements, the base schema design, that in-depth review of all of the linked records, that is we're working in that data layer and we're really understanding the relationships of the data. And it's not where most of our customers will be working. Once we have their application deployed, they'll be in interfaces, they'll be in forms, they'll be using it as a designed software versus the underlying layer of the data layer within Airtable. But getting this wrong and jumping too far into, hey, let's get an interface, let's get people, let's make it so that like everybody can start playing with it and using it too early, can then either cause some friction for the users because it's not seamless yet, or we almost have to like unravel everything and pull things back together. And again, that structure of what's the right hierarchy, in this case, projects, programs, portfolios, PMP says this is what it is, that's how you follow. But we also always have to adjust the flavor to match what is the customer's language. And we really need to understand all of that to then be able to jump into the actual, like, okay, let's start putting math around this for formulas and automations. Let's start ensuring that things are displaying right. But it's really that, like, base schema design is a big part of that first 20%, 20-25% of a project to make sure the rest goes perfect.
Yeah, if I think a really good comparison for this is if you used Airtable AI Co-Builder or any AI in general, the quality of your output really represents how good your input was. So the more time you spent investing in a really, really good prompt and a really detailed prompt, you're going to get a far better output. So you could think of these first 1 to 2 weeks as we're doing a ton of the prompt building. We're trying to gather all the information, like all these, trying to take all these different user personas put together into this really good Airtable. But if you're trying to build a project management system from scratch, I think it could get you the AI co-builder may be able to get you like 30% of the way there, but doing all of the customization for every single user, that's really what we're optimizing for in these first 2 weeks. So yeah, oftentimes, like Kelly said, it is a little bit maybe jarring for people. People are like maybe like some, even it's sometimes like our developers are like, I want to build, I want to build, let me build, let me add it, and we just have to say like, let's slow down, make sure we really understand all of the requirements before we even touch like editing something in Airtable.
Very much. I think it's ensuring that we understand, like, what's the ultimate end goal, what's the creation, and then work on the guts in between. And then what happens for the rest of the project is really that in between process. um but yeah, I definitely, trust me, like, I want to get in and play and like show new features and stuff. But we really, when we take the time and slow down and ask the questions from the very beginning and build the appropriate framework, then everything kind of falls together pretty quickly going forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think even if I look at like some of the stuff that I've seen happen internally is like if you don't hear people out and you don't like try to listen to them, oftentimes you'll not realize like what the actual problem is, and so you'll jump to the wrong solution. Like maybe we think the solution for this is we like, let's say we need we're having problems with resourcing, and so we need this resource allocation view, but it's really not like the resource allocation view that mattered. If we like would have asked why a few more times with the users, we would find out maybe it's like the notifications and the expectations and tracking around SLAs for when I get this request, this is when it's resourced, for example. So these first 1 to 2 weeks or 1 to 3 weeks in this example, it really allows us to ask why a bunch of times, I think, and like know, okay, this is why it matters to you, why we're building this.
I think we have another great customer example where it was a complete end-to-end procurement process, and it's taking too long is the feedback that they get from end users.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no way to explain where it's taking too long or why, or is it a certain team? Is it a certain type of purchase? And to do all of that digging without Airtable, I think would just be like literally manually going and calculating and looking at emails and trying to remember when somebody hit approve on something. But we were able to design a tracker that tracked how long in each phase and with maybe like each owner, and then start dashboarding that out. And then they realize, oh, we're actually not taking too long. We just have a step over here that we can improve, and then the entire timeline will shrink.
Yep. Yep. So that's what you can expect in the first few weeks of an Airtable implementation, ideally with Optimize, but with really any partner, what you should expect in those first few weeks. Uh, Next, we're going to be jumping into how do you build something like your first use case in Airtable while also keeping in mind like later on there may be 10 times as many people using these connected systems, maybe not the exact system you're starting with, but as we're building, how do we keep that big picture in mind for higher ups or for other teams to come in and start using Airtable? So if you're interested in knowing about that, click the video here in the end screen and it'll take you right there.